All right, welcome to part two. So hopefully you added the annotation to the last detail, the footing detail. And it may be a little tough for you to see on the handout what these things mean, so I figure I'd start out with that. Let me zoom in just a touch more so you can read that. This is 3/4 inch plywood. That's what that means. And this is 2x8 floor joists at 16 inch on center. And that's pointing to the big beam there. Okay, so the key thing to this was setting your model space scale to 3/4 inch to a foot, so that when you put in text at 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch, it came out appropriately. And of course, your dimensions came to the correct size. And if I go back to my layout, I can see that I've zoomed in. If I double click inside there, it's also set to 3/4 inch to a foot, and then I locked it in. Okay? And I made sure that I was in the correct layers as I did that. All right, so hopefully your finished product looks like this, and you understood the process. I wouldn't by any means think that you'd be an expert at it, but at least hopefully you've seen the function of annotated scaling and the benefit of it. There is more to go, and what I'd like to do is to talk a little bit about viewport layer visibility. Right. So one of the easier things is something we may have wrestled with all semester long up to this point, and that is when I have a light color, it looks great in model space, but when I switch to layout space, now it's not so great because it's hard to see. Well, there is a way to solve that problem, and I'd like for you to first open up your layer properties palette and just kind of slide that off to the side. We'll start. I'm going to actually pan my drawing over so I have some room to see this. Let's say that we'll start in the floor plan, the warehouse floor plan viewport. What you need to do is to double click to activate that. Now, you may have seen this in your layer palette and not given it much thought, but notice there's two color columns. The one that just says color is the master color control, right? But this one here says viewport color. Now, viewport color means I have to be in layout space, right, which obviously we are, and I have to activate the viewport in order for this feature to work. So what I can do is say, all right, for my dimensions in model space, I want them to be cyan, but in viewport or paper space, I want them to be blue. Okay? So now let's test this out. So double click outside of this and go back to model space and see how, where is it here? See how it's still cyan here, but it's blue here. So it's much easier to see, and we kind of get the best of both worlds. And notice, and this is where it can drive you crazy, how come I don't see that here? And that's because you have to have the viewport active. So if I double click in there, then it switches. So that can make you crazy if you're not sure what's going on in there, and I'd say approach with caution for that simple sanity sake. All right, so there's one with layer viewport visibility. Now, next is I want to go back to model space, and I want to rest my mouse. I'm not clicking, I'm just resting it on a dimension. And notice that we see the little tick marks, right? Those tick marks mean that we have an object that is annotated, okay? So once you create a style and you use it and you roll your mouse over it, you're going to see that symbol meaning, hey, there's annotation going here. And that's a little visual cue. Now, I led you through this, and I led you in a way where hopefully everything worked, and I kind of let you loose on your own, and if you had any troubles there, what happened, why, and how do I fix it? So not everything works perfect all the time, and I want to show us that. So right now we're seeing a bit of an example of that. My warehouse floor word here looks tiny. When I come back in here, it looks fine. Okay? And if I come back to model space, I want to do something here that's going to trigger a problem that you may or may not have had. Okay? What I want to do is with my model space annotation scale incorrectly set for this part of the drawing, I want to go to single line text, and I want to click here, and I want the height to be 0.25, right, for quarter inch. And I want to type in, let's say, this text is incorrect. Enter. This text is incorrect. Now, when you look at it, you should immediately say something's not right here. So just bear with me and type that in here. Okay? So now when I go back to C-size paper, I don't see it. And that may have happened to you. And that's the biggest problem that you will have. That's the most common problem. And what did we do wrong? We did not set the model space scale to the scale that the viewport needs in order to properly display it. Now watch this. I'm going to go back to C-size paper, and I'm going to double click inside here, and in order for me to change the display scale, right, I can't access that. I have to unlock it. Now I'm going to change this to 3/8 inch to a foot, which is the scale of the of what? I think we set it to for that. So I'm going to click 3/8 inch to the foot. It's going to change its magnification. I guess we didn't do that in here. What scale is it? 3/4, I'm sorry. It's going to change its magnification when we set it to 3/4. And I should see this text. This text is incorrect setting. Okay? Now, I only have one little symbol here and two symbols here, and that's because this existed when I changed my scales for this and this. And that tells me that I have multiple scale factors built into this. And I don't expect you to fully grasp this, but let's say I wanted to see this at 1/4 inch to the foot. So I'm going to go back into model space for this and zoom in. So let's say I need to see this in my floor plan. I realize I put it in the wrong scale. What do I do to fix this? Okay, what I do is I click on the text, and then I right-click. And I get something in this right-click menu that I would not ordinarily see, and I can't highlight it here with the screen writer. I see annotative object scale. I would not see that in this if this was not annotated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add and delete scales. And I get a dialog box. And in here it tells me which scale it is, which is wrong. So I need to add 1/4 inch to the foot scale. Now I have the decision to make and say I could delete this because it's wrong and I don't want to see the smaller one in this area here. Or I could say, no harm done, because I'm only going to be viewing it in layout space. But let's just say we'll delete the wrong one as we can, right? And that immediately goes to the bigger one. Even though my display scale is still wrong here, we forced this to go to the larger size. Now when I switch to my C-size paper, and I'm going to go back to 1/4 inch to the foot, see what happens? It now displays properly. I'm going to relock that in. Okay, so reviewing. You're moving along and all of a sudden text that you see in model space is not displayed in the viewport in layout space. That typically means you didn't set the display scale properly at the time you added the text. The scale that was here, right, whatever scale you had here, was not the scale that it needs to be shown in your viewport. That's the problem. And it's kind of like damage done. And the way to fix that is what I just showed you. You click on it, right-click, annotative object scale, and delete. Get rid of the wrong one, or first add the right one, then get rid of the wrong one. Okay? That's typically what goes wrong in this process. All right, last thing I want to show you with annotated scales, and it's really, again, viewport layer visibility, is we can really make this stuff work for us. And this is kind of a demonstration just so I can go through this quickly, although you're going to need to do this on your homework assignment. But what I'm going to do, and you can follow along with me on this if you want, is I'm going to right-click on my C-size paper, and I'm going to say move or copy. I don't believe we've ever done that, so maybe you should follow along with me here. You're not going to have to do this on your homework. It's what I do with the copy that you're going to have to do. So I'm going to say move or copy, and I want to make a copy. I don't want to move it. So I'm going to say create copy, but I do want this to go after this one. So I'm going to say move to the end. So, and then I'm going to say OK. Now, all that happened is it created two of these. And if I click on this one, I have the exact same thing. You know, what's different? Really nothing. What I'm going to do in this copy is I'm going to delete these two viewports. Okay? Now don't stress because they're not gone. They're still in the first one. Okay? But it's not good practice to have two viewports of the same name. So I'm going to rename my second viewport by double-clicking on it. Okay? And I'm going to leave the 24 by 18 there. Actually, I'm going to leave the C size there. That's kind of saying the same thing. C size. And I'm just going to change that to say C size electrical plan. Okay. Now, let's say that this is going to be a floor plan with some electrical symbols. First of all, I don't need this to be off-centered on the page, so I'm going to center this now. This is a feature drawing. And I've already got my dimensions here. So let's say I'm only interested in showing electrical symbols here. So I'm going to turn this layer off, and this is purely the viewport layer visibility. So I'm going to double-click inside here, and that's the key thing. You have to activate the viewport. Now I'm going to go up to my quick layer list here, and for layer dimension, this would turn everything off in all viewports and in all layouts. This would freeze everything in all viewports, all layers, and then this only freezes it in the current viewport. Okay? So I'm going to click that, and it gets a little snowflake, and my dimension layer disappears here. Right? Now if I go over to my first tab, my dimension layer is still on there. Okay? That's the beauty of viewport layer visibility. Now, I don't have to have two separate tabs to do that. Just watch me on this. I'm going to undo. I could shut my dimension layer off on just this one and leave it on in that one, right? The key thing is it has to be active. Once it's active, I'm going to go up to my layer dimension, and I'm going to click that third symbol in. See? So it's off here, it's on here. Now I'm going to undo that or turn that back on. Okay, so that is purely viewport layer visibility. Now I'm going to do one more thing and follow along with me on this. I'm going to go back to model space, and I'm going to just draw a random size rectangle. I want to do that in layer 0. And I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'm going to draw that. And I'm going to offset this as if this is a room inside here. So I'm going to go to AutoCAD Offset, and we have to set our offset amount, let's say 6 inches for a wall. And I'm going to click on this and move to the inside and click. Okay, so I drew a rectangle of any size, and then I offset that inward 6 inches. Now, I'm going to create a layer called section lines. Doing that, caps lock. Section line. And I'm going to make this, let's say, yellow. And I'm going to make this layer current. So I created a layer called section lines. It's yellow, it's continuous, and I made it current. And I'm going to put hatching in here. Now, last week we learned about hatch, but what we didn't really learn so much, and I put the note in the homework email, but now we're going to see this. I wanted to make sure that I included this. If I go to my hatch command, and this is where you have to be careful, and let's say I want an ANSI and I bring my mouse over to that, it looks like it's solid. Why? Because my scale is not properly set. My scale should be the scale of the viewport, which is 1/4 inch to the foot, which is 48, right? So my scale for my hatch pattern should be 48, or I could click annotate. Problem is, because we've been playing around here, my display scale is not correct. Now last week we didn't learn annotated, so I'm not going to use that on this. I'm simply going to set the scale of my hatch pattern to 48. And then I'm going to come down here and you'll see it'll look like normal striping. And really the rule is that there's 1/8 inch between stripes. But that 1/8 inch was so tiny at its 1-to-1 scale that there were so many lines that looked solid. So I'm just going to click in here and hit enter. Okay, so that's an important thing, that to get your scale to be correct to the scale of the viewport. Now, getting back to the task at hand, if I look at my C-size paper, I see my hatching in here. If I look at my electrical plan, I see my hatching here. Let's say I don't want to see my hatching in here, okay? So I'm going to double click to activate, it actually was, and I'm going to go to my quick layer list, and for section lines, I'm going to freeze in the current viewport. Okay, and now when I go back to C-size, it's still on, okay? So I've just seen a couple of examples of that, and you're going to need to do that on your assignment. Okay, so it can be viewport-specific layer visibility. It's a lot to follow. Okay, so that concludes our viewport and our annotation scale topics. So we're going to finish up. I'm going to go back to model space, and we're going to finish up with some inquiry commands. And the first few will go quickly. It's just the area that I want to spend a couple of minutes on. So I'm in layout space. What I want to do is delete this text as incorrect, and let's delete this hatching for what we're about to do. Okay, so the inquiry commands, that is really in this utilities panel. And it's really what's happening right within this list. So if I pick, really the first command is the quick measure. We've used this, I've shown this to you. Let's just see it again. When I click this, I want to measure inside that room. I've got, the length and width of that. I want to measure some things in this room here. I just move my mouse around. Okay? So we know about that. Let's say that I want to measure the distance. Let's say just for the heck of it, I want to measure from this corner here to this corner here. I can't do that with quick measure. Right? I have to do that with distance. So I'm going to click on the word measure, and I'm going to select distance. And with this, I just snap from point to point, and it'll tell me what that is. It'll tell me that and more, right? So here's distance 29 feet. Still gives me the vertical, the horizontal, gives me an angle, and more than I need, more than I want. But that's more of manually determining the distance of something by clicking. And as soon as I hit escape, it goes away. Okay, next. If I click in there, I can also determine the angle specifically or the radius. Now, we don't have anything round, so before we choose something from there, I'm going to go to the circle command, and I'll just draw a circle inside the floor plan. And it's in layer section line, but that's okay. So now if I go to measure radius, right, and I select the radius, it'll tell me the radius and the diameter. Okay. And if I go to measure and I select angle, and I click on, let's say, this line and this line, it's going to tell me, it should tell me it's 90. But if I clicked on two lines that were on an angle, it would tell me that. For example, I'll just do this quickly here. I'll go to a line, I'll just draw two lines out in space. that are on some kind of crazy angle. And then I'll go to measure, angle, and I'll click those two. Okay, and it's 25.91. All right, so that's those are the quick and easy ones. The last one, this is one that's valuable, and that is area. So I could determine the area of this floor plan. Let's say we'll go from the outer corners, right? We'll go outside to outside. So what I want you to do is to pick measure and then select area. Now, the rule with area is you have to start and finish in the same spot. So I'm going to start in the lower left corner, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to work my way around clockwise. And you'll see that it's showing this big opaque green, so you can keep track of where you clicked if it was a big area here. Now remember, I've clicked here, and I need to go back and click that same spot that I started from, and then hit enter. And it tells me that I've got square inches and square feet and the perimeter, right? So I've got 1,216 square feet to the outside of this building, and it's a perimeter of 152 feet. All right, so that's easy enough to do. Now, what if, let's say, this rectangle represented a void area, which means I should not include that space for my square footage. And this time, let's say we're also interested in the inside of the building, right? So I want to know what's the inside square footage minus this thing. Okay? So the way we do that is we go back to area, and I snapped just the, I went too far already. Take two. Okay? I hit escape, go back to area, and before I start clicking, what I have to do is observe the command prompt. And I need to go into add, right? Because I'm actually going to subtract, but before I subtract, I have to add. I don't just start clicking here. Otherwise, if I just start clicking and I get all done and hit enter, it's done, and I won't even see these options. So I have to begin by selecting add. So go ahead and click add, and then do the same thing only on the inside corners of the wall. So I'm going to work my way around, and remember, finish where you started, and then enter. And it tells me it should be a little bit smaller than what we had before there. So 1141 square feet. But what I now need to do is go into subtract mode. So I pick subtract, and I now select the, let's say, because it's an interior room, I'm going to pick the outside corners. And so to practice for this, it really doesn't matter which corners you click. And remember, finish where you start, and then hit enter. Okay, and that gives me my revised total, right? Now, sometimes it's like, well, I don't even remember what it began with. So hit the F2 function key. And the F2 function key shows us, let's say if we backtrack here, this was the original square footage to the inside walls. Then we subtracted the inner room, I'll call it, and then it revised our total to 1049. Okay, so you always have the F2 key to kind of chart its progress here. If you had multiple areas, you could say subtract multiple areas of voids and get a total of that. All right, so you're going to need to do that on your assignment, right? You're going to need to tell me what the area of a structure is. All right, so that concludes the lesson. There's going to be a assignment description to follow this. So I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to bring up the assignment, and then we will talk about that. Okay, so let's talk about the assignment. You have everything you need on Web Campus to download, and I have the assignment handout right here. The way you're going to begin this assignment is a little differently, so I want to demonstrate that. There's a couple of key steps that if you don't follow right, you're going to be frustrated. And it's not difficult, you just need to pay attention. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up this drawing, layout assignment, spring 2020. We're going to, this is the key step here, we're going to use the right-click menu of the Layout menu tab, and we're going to import our title block drawing, which is technically our title block layout, from our title block drawing into the assignment drawing. All right, so to restate that, we want to create our homework in this Layout Assignment 2020, but we need to bring our title block layout into that. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. This is a good capability. So back into AutoCAD, I'm going to open up the homework file, right? And you guys will know where yours is, right? So here's Layout Assignment Spring 20. And if I just click on Layout 1 or Layout 2, I don't have my title block in there, right? So we need to bring the title block layout into this. So here's how we do this, okay, which is the step 2 on the homework assignment. So you're going to right-click, first of all, activate Layout 1, right? So click on Layout 1 to activate it, then right-click on Layout 1. And this next step is something new here. The second one down that says From Template, you're going to select From Template. Now, be careful because yours might come up on DWT. And you'll never see, it might bring you to here, it might bring you somewhere, but you'll never be able to get to your title block assignment. You need to switch this to DWG, drawing file. Then you need to go find where your title block drawing is. Right? I need to go find mine. Okay, so here's my title block drawing. When I click on it, you can see there it is, right? So I'm going to find it, click it, and pick Open. Now, you may or may not have named your layout. At the time we did the title block drawing, I said that you should, so you'll know that it stands out. If you didn't, it may say Layout 1 and Layout 2, so you have to roll the dice a little bit. I'm going to, since mine is obvious what it is, I'm clicking 18 by 12. And if it didn't work, you'll have to do this again and pick the second one, but I'm picking 18 by 12 and I'm picking OK. Now, it doesn't look like anything happened, right? But if I look down at my layouts, there it is, 18 by 12 layout. So I'm going to click that, right? And there's my title block drawing, and I brought my title block drawing into this assignment. Now, remember, you should have a layout in there, and we really don't want this, right? We don't have to delete it. We can recycle it, so to speak. So if I go back to the assignment here, this is what your finished product's going to be. Now, there's a couple of sneaky things in here. Number one, you're not seeing the viewport for this, but you are seeing it for this one and this one. So that means you should actually create two viewport layers, Vport and Vport 1, so that I can independently shut this layer off but leave this viewport layer on. Okay? Now, let's keep reading here. So, assuming we got past step 2, switch to the Layout tab containing your title block and prepare the new viewports, right? So your finished products, you're going to have a viewport here, you're going to have a viewport here, and then, of course, this round viewport. So you can use your existing one to just shrink it down by the grip corners to make this one. Or you can delete it and start from scratch. It's up to you. All right, now, create the viewports with the appropriate size and then scale the geometry within it as shown in the illustration below. So in this assignment, you're going to have scale of 1/8 inch to a foot, 3/8 inch to a foot, and 3/16 to a foot. Okay? And make sure the viewport frames are at the left are not hidden when plotted. And that could be viewport 1 layer or viewport layer with shutting off, turning off the no plot thing. You must manage the annotation scales and layers to appear or not to appear, right? So look at this. I've got my hatch here, my section lines here with my plumbing equipment. But in here I have my hatch with no plumbing equipment. So hopefully there's a layer in there for plumbing and door that you can shut off in one and turn on in the other. Add the hatch dimension and text to complete the diagram. Okay? All dimensions and text must be in model space. I shouldn't be seeing, when I check your drawings, I don't want anything to be in layout space. Annotative text types. Small 1/8 inch, big 1/4 inch. Okay? Somewhere it mentions this, include the connecting lines between the main viewport and the bay window. That's this right here. So in layout space, right? In paper or layout space, create a layer with phantom line style and just draw a circle by eye to surround that, and then draw a line snapping from nearest to this to the nearest of your viewport. Make sure the LT scale is small, So this is, you have to work for the details a little bit. Then, I want you to do the, I'll make it easy for you. On the outside, which would be the chimney on the outside of the house, tell me what the area is. Okay? And did I say, let me see. I have to go back to the drawing here to see that. Yes, round to the nearest foot. Okay, so you're going to trace the outside. You go straight across the doors, right, out here, and then work your way around here, right, and then round it off to the nearest foot. And type that in right here. Type in what your answer is. Okay? Okay, so you're going to save that drawing as layout assignment XX, being your first and last name, and then you're going to email me the drawing next Friday, which would be, I'll look at my calendar here, Friday, April 10th. All right, so hopefully you understood all of that. We're getting to the more advanced part of the course, so some of these topics you have to think about it a little bit deeper and to properly execute that. Okay, so I'm stopping the video here, and good luck, and email me with any questions. And please, those of you, I've gotten some work from you guys, and good job on that, but I'm not getting work from everybody, and the semester's wearing on, and you're going to find yourself in a troubled spot. So please get this work done and get an email to me. All right, thank you, and see you next time.